Tashmad Shila Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Shila Prabhupada ki jai, Nityam Vishnu Vishnupada Tashmad Shila Bhakti Vigyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj ki jai, Nityam Vishnu Vishnupada Tashmad Shila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada ki jai, Nityam Vishnu Mahabhagavat Shila Gokshara Swavaji Maharaj ki jai, Nityam Vishnu Shila Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur ki jai, Nityam Vishnu Vaishnav Sarvabhauma Shri Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Vaishnav Sarvabhauma Shri Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Avirva Thirubal Titi ki jai. Shri Rupano Gauriya Guru Varga ki jai. Nityam Vishnu Shupad Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Bhakti Dait Madhav Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Tatiya Shubhati Rabha Titi ki jai. Shri Rasikananda Prabhu ki jai. Tatiya Rabha Titi ki jai. Shri Rup Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jeev Gopal Bhatta Raghunath Sharada Goswami Prabhu ki jai. Shri Sarup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shiva Parshad Vrinda ki jai. Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur ki jai. प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासरी गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री क्षेत्र मंडल गौर मंडल व्रज मंडल मथुरा वृंदावन महाराज की जय। देवी की जय। श्री तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी की जय। श्री वनवासी भगवान की जय। श्री गोपेश्वर महादेव की जय। हरि नाम संकीर्तन की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद्-भागवतम की जय। श्री गौर प्रेमानंदे। Alright, nobody is here yet, but I'll start from the time anyways. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Radhikaya Priyatmani Shri Śrīmad-Bhakti Vedanta Narayati Namini. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Śrīmate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namini. Nam Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauratishe Namaha. Guruve Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Tadalaya Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tarbhaktaya Namo Namaha. Yam pravrajantam anupetam apeta krityam Dvaipayano viraha katara ajuhavo Putreti tanmayataya taravo bhinetu Stam sarva bhuta hridayam munimanatosmi. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam Devim saraswati vyasam tato jayamutirayet. Shrinvatam swakata Krishna punya shavana kirtana Ridantasto hyapatrani vidhunoti surit satam. Nashta prayesh babadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya Bhagavatu tamashloke bhaktir bhavati naishtaki. Tavaivasmi na jivami tvaya vina iti vigyaya radhe tvam nayamam charanantikam. Bhaktya vina aparada lakshay kshiptashtakama ditarangamati. Kripa mai tvam sharanam prapanna vrinde namaste charanarvindam. Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta-vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. All right, so how this chapter began, we read about the stages of, under the Lord's supervision, according to his karma, the jiva is made to enter a woman's womb through the particle of male semen for assuming a particular type of body. And then then we read about the development of the embryo from the first night till 7 months. First month, the head develops, second month, hands, feet, other limbs develop, third month, nails, fingers, toes, hair, etc., etc. And then sufferings of the child within the womb. Deriving its nutrition from the food and drink taken by the mother, the fetus grows and remains in that abdominal residence, which is the breeding place of other worms. Worms bite the tender body of the child repeatedly, due to which he becomes unconscious moment after moment. Owing to the mother's eating bitter, pungent, hot, salty, dry, and sour foods, the body of the child suffers pains which are intolerable. Unable to move because of the covering of the amnion and the intestines, the child remains lying on one side of the abdomen, his head turned towards his belly and his back and neck arched like a bow. The child is not free to move. If he is fortunate, he remembers his actions and his past 100 births and grieves. What is the possibility of peace of mind in that condition? From the 7th month, he attains consciousness. At that time, Sutivata becomes active and tosses the child downwards. Like the worms born of the same womb, Sodara, he cannot remain in one place. The jiva, frightened and pleading, offers prayers to the Lord who has put him in that condition. Oh, and then there's a note here. The prayers of the jiva in the womb, as mentioned here, do not indicate that every bound-up jiva prays in this manner. Only a jiva who is a devotee prays like this. Okay. Prayers by the devotee jiva within the womb. This is what we read yesterday. I take shelter of the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, who appears in his various forms, who walks on the earth and who awards fearlessness. Being sinful, I got this situation from him. I am lying in the womb due to Maya, but he is also here with me, but is unaffected and changeless. Although unlimited, he is perceived in the repentant heart. I am in this material body made of 5 elements, although I am essentially spiritual, but he is transcendental to material nature and the living entities. How can a person deeply afflicted by samsara again engage in the loving service of the Lord without his or his devotee's mercy? Who else but the Paramatma, residing in all beings through all phases of time, can give this knowledge to a person like me? Therefore, we should surrender unto him. Only to destroy our miseries. When will I get out? The foolish jiva, tortured inside the womb of his mother and desiring to get out, counts the months and prays, "O Lord, when will I get out from this confinement?" Am I merciless since I do not get you out right now? Am I merciless since I do not get you out right now? Oh, that's what the Lord is saying. And then with shame, fear, biting his tongue, putting himself in a humble position, the jiva speaks. This is probably Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, because he'd always do these kinds of anyways. Jiva speaks. By your causeless mercy, I am awakened to consciousness, although I am only 10 months old. I cannot repay this mercy, but can only pray with folded hands. The jiva in another type of body sees only by instinct. But I have a human body in which I can control my senses and can understand my destination. By the Supreme Lord's grace, I can see him within and without. And the Lord says, you choose me by bhakti, but you are agitated by suffering. Because you requested to get out, I will now take you out of the womb. Those suffering, that's what the Lord says. I think this is Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary. Though I am suffering here inside the womb, I do not desire to get out of this place, because the place outside is under the control of Deva Maya, who bewilders the jiva and perpetuates his samsara. And then the Lord says, so then what have you decided? And the jiva says, therefore I will stay here and destroy my sufferings with the help of my friends, clear consciousness, to surrender unto you. By keeping Vishnupad in my mind, I will not take birth again. Okay, so now that's where we read up to yesterday. Now we're reading suffering of the jiva after he comes out of the womb. All right, Haribol Prajuna Prabhu. Where is it? Oh, it's right here. Kapila Uvacha Evam Kritamatir Garbe Dashamasya Stuvan Rishi Sadakshipatyavachina Prasutai Sutimaruta. Lord Kapila continued, the 10-month-old living entity has these desires even while in the womb. But while he thus extols the Lord, the mind that helps parturition, how do you say that word? Parturition. I don't know what that word means. Let me just see. Oh, it probably means pushing out. Yeah, the action of giving birth to young, childbirth. Parturition. So the wind that helps parturition propels him forth with his face turned downward so that he may be born. Tena vasrishta sahasa kritva vakshira atura viniskramati kritrena nirujvasa hatasmriti. Pushed downward all of a sudden by the wind, the child comes out with great trouble, head downward, breathless and deprived of memory due to severe agony. Purport, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. The word kritrena means with great difficulty. When the child comes out of the abdomen through the narrow passage due to the pressure there, the breathing system completely stops, and due to agony, the child loses his memory. Sometimes the trouble is so severe that the child comes out dead or almost dead. One can imagine what the pangs of birth are like. The child remains for 10 months in that horrible condition within the abdomen, and at the end of 10 months, he is forcibly pushed out. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord points out that a person who is serious about advancement in spiritual consciousness should always consider the 4 pangs of birth, death, disease, and old age. The materialist advances in many ways, but he is unable to stop these 4 principles of suffering inherent in material existence. Patito bhuvyasin mishra vishtabhur iva cheshtate Roruyati gate jnane viparitam gatim gata. The child thus falls on the ground, smeared with stool and blood, and plays just like a worm germinated from a stool. He loses his superior consciousness and cries under the spell of Maya. Parachanta navidhusha pushyamana janena sa anabhipretamapana pratyakyatum anishvara. After coming out of the abdomen, the child is given to the care of persons who are unable to understand what he wants, and thus he is nursed by such persons. Unable to refuse whatever is given to him, he falls into undesirable circumstances. Purport: within the abdomen of the mother, the nourishment of the child was being carried on by nature's own arrangement. The atmosphere within the abdomen was not at all pleasing, but as far as the child's feeding was concerned, it was being properly done by the laws of nature. But upon coming out of the abdomen, the child falls into a different atmosphere. He wants to eat one thing, but something else is given to him because no one knows his actual demands, and he cannot refuse the undesirables given to him. Sometimes the child cries for the mother's breast, but because the nurse thinks that it is due to pain within his stomach that he's crying, she supplies him some bitter medicine. The child does not want it, but he cannot refuse it. He is put in very awkward circumstances, and the suffering continues. Shaito suchiparyanke jantu sveta jatushite neshakandu yane kanam asanotthana chishtane. Laid down on a foul bed infested with sweat and germs, the poor child is incapable of scratching his body to get relief from this itching sensation, to say nothing of sitting up, standing, or even moving. Purport. It should be noted that the child is born crying and suffering. After birth, the same suffering continues, and he cries. Because he is disturbed by the germs in his foul bed, which is contaminated by his urine and stool, the poor child continues to cry. He is unable to take any remedial measure for his relief. Tu dantama tvacham dangsha mashaka matkunadaya rudantam vigata jnanam krimaya krimikam yata. In his helpless condition, gnats, mosquitoes, bugs, and other germs bite the baby, whose skin is tender, just as smaller worms bite a big worm. The child, deprived of his wisdom, cries bitterly. Purport. The word vigata jnanam means that the spiritual knowledge which the child develops in the abdomen is already lost due to the spell of Maya. Owing to various kinds of disturbances and to being out of the abdomen, the child cannot remember what he was thinking of for his salvation. It is assumed that even if a person acquires some spiritually uplifting knowledge, circumstantially he is prone to forget it. Not only children, but also elderly persons should be very careful to protect their sense of Krishna consciousness and avoid unfavorable circumstances so that they may not forget their prime duty. Ittevam shaishavam bhuktva dukam bhogantameva cha alabdhapi alabdhapi sito jnanat ita manyo shucharpita. In this way, the child passes through his childhood, suffering different kinds of distress, and attains boyhood. In boyhood also, he suffers pain over desires to get things he can never achieve, and thus, due to ignorance, he becomes angry and sorry. Purport. From birth to the end of 5 years of age is called childhood. After 5 years up to the end of the 15th year is called Poganda. At 16 years of age, youth begins. The distresses of childhood are already explained, but when the child attains boyhood, he is enrolled in a school which he does not like. He wants to play, but he is forced to go to school and study and take responsibility for passing examinations. Another kind of distress is that he wants to get some things with which to play, but circumstances may be such that he is not able to attain his PlayStation 4. He's not able to attain them, and thus he becomes aggrieved and feels pain. In one word, he is unhappy, even in his boyhood, just as he was unhappy in his childhood. What to speak of youth? Boys are apt to create so many artificial demands for playing, and when they do not attain satisfaction, they become furious with anger, and the result is suffering. Sahadehena manena vardhamanena manyana karoti vigraham kame kamishvantaya chatmana. Let's see if there are any comments. Yeah. Okay. With the growth of the body, the living entity, in order to vanquish his soul, increases his false prestige and anger, and thereby creates enmity towards similarly lusty people. Purport. In Bhagavad Gita, 3rd chapter, verse 36, Arjuna inquired from Krishna about the cause of a living being's lust. It is said that a living entity is eternal and, as such, qualitatively one with the Supreme Lord. Then what is the reason he falls prey to the material and commits so many sinful activities by the influence of the material energy? In reply to this question, Lord Krishna said that it is lust which causes a living entity to glide down from its exalted position to the abominable condition of material existence. This lust circumstantially changes into anger. Both lust and anger stands on the platform of the mode of passion. Lust is actually the product of the mode of passion, and in the absence of satisfaction of lust, the same desire transforms into anger on the platform of ignorance. When ignorance covers the soul, it is the source of its degradation to the most abominable condition of hellish life. To raise oneself from hellish life to the highest position of spiritual understanding is to transform this lust into love of Sri Krishna. And to transform this lust into love of Sri Krishna. That's the highest position of spiritual understanding. Srila Narottam Das Thakur, a great acharya of the Vaishnava Sampradaya, said, Kama Krishna Kamar Pani. Due to our lusts, we want many things for our sense gratification. But the same lust can be transformed in a purified way so that we want everything for the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I like how Srila Prabhupada made that in italics. We want everything for the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anger also can be utilized towards a person who is atheistic or who is envious of the personality of Godhead. As we have fallen into this material existence because of our lusts and anger, the same two qualities can be utilized for the purpose of advancing in Krishna consciousness, and one can elevate himself again to his former pure spiritual position. Srila Rupa Goswami has therefore recommended that because in material existence we have so many objects of sense gratification which we need for the maintenance of the body, we should use all of them without attachment for the purpose of satisfying the senses of Krishna. That is actual renunciation. Bhutai panchavi arabde dehe deya puto sakrit aham mameta sargraha karoti ko matir matim. By such ignorance, the living entity accepts the material body, which is made of 5 elements, as himself. With this misunderstanding, he accepts non-permanent things as his own and increases his ignorance in the darkest region. The expansion of ignorance is explained in this verse. The first ignorance is to identify one's material body, which is made of 5 elements, as the self. And the second is to accept something as one's own due to a bodily connection. In this way, ignorance expands. The living entity is eternal, but because of his accepting non-permanent things, misidentifying his interest, he is put into ignorance, and therefore he suffers material pains. Tarartam kurute karma yad bhato yati samsritim yo nuyati tadar klesham avidya karma bandhana. For the sake of the body, which is a source of constant trouble to him, and which follows him because he is bound by ties of ignorance and fruitive activities, he performs various actions which cause him to be subjugated to repeated birth and death. Purport. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said that one has to work to satisfy Yajna or Vishnu. For any work done without the purpose of satisfying the Supreme Personality of Godhead is a cause of bondage. In the conditioned state, a living entity accepting his body as himself forgets his eternal relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead and acts on the interests of his body. He takes the body as himself, his bodily expansions as his kinsman, and the lands from which his body is born as worshipable. In this way, he performs all sorts of misconceived activities, which lead to his perpetual bondage and repetition of birth and death in various species. In modern civilization, the so-called social, national, and government leaders mislead people more and more under the bodily conception of life, with the results that all the leaders with their followers are gliding down to hellish conditions of birth after birth. An example is given in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Anda yatandar upaniyamana. When a blind man leads several other blind men, the result is that all of them fall down in a ditch. That's Prahlad Maharaj, right? I don't know. I think so. This is actually happening. There are many leaders to lead the ignorant public, but because every one of them is bewildered by the bodily conception of life, there is no peace and prosperity in the human society. So-called yogis who perform various bodily feats are also in the same category as such ignorant people. Those people are in the same those so-called yogis are in the same category as such ignorant people, because the Hatha Yoga system is especially recommended for persons who are grossly implicated in the bodily conception. The conclusion is that as long as one is fixed in the bodily conception, he has to suffer birth and death. Yadasarvi patipuna shishnodara kritodyamai astito ramate jantus tamo vishati purvavat. If therefore the living entity again associates with the path of unrighteousness, influenced by sensually minded people engaged in the pursuit of sexual enjoyment and the gratification of the palate, he again goes to hell as before. Purport. It has been explained that the conditioned soul is put into the under Tamisra and Tamisra hellish conditions, and after suffering there, he gets a hellish body like the dogs or hogs. After several births, he again comes into the form of a human being. How the human being is born is also described by Kapila Devi. The human being develops in the mother's abdomen and suffers there and comes out again. After all these sufferings, if he gets another chance in a human body and wastes his valuable time in the association of persons who are concerned with sexual life and unpalatable dishes, then naturally he again glides down to the same Anda Tamisra and Tamisra hells. Generally, people are concerned with the satisfaction of the tongue and the satisfaction of the genitals. That is material life. Material life means eat, drink, be merry, and enjoy. No concern for understanding one's spiritual identity and the process of spiritual advancement. Since materialistic people are concerned with the tongue, belly, and genitals, if anyone wants to advance in spiritual life, he must be very careful about associating with such people. To associate with such materialistic men is to commit purposeful suicide in the human form of life. It is said, therefore, that an intelligent man should give up such undesirable association. It is said, therefore, that an intelligent man should give up such undesirable association and should always mix with saintly persons. When he is in association of saintly persons, all his doubts about the spiritual expansion of life are eradicated, and he makes tangible progress on the path of spiritual understanding. It is also sometimes found that people are very much addicted to a particular type of religious faith. Hindus, Muslims, and Christians are faithful in their particular type of religion, and they go to the church, temple, or mosque. But unfortunately, they cannot give up the association of persons who are too much addicted to sex life and satisfaction of the palate. Here it is clearly said that one may officially officially be a very religious man, but if he associates with such persons, then he is sure to slide down to the darkest region of hell. Satyam socham dayamonam buddhishir yashakshama shamodamo bhagascheti yatsangar yati samshayam. He becomes devoid of truthfulness, cleanliness, mercy, gravity, spiritual intelligence, shyness, austerity, fame, forgiveness, control of the mind, control of the senses, fortune, and all such opportunities. Purport. Those who are too addicted to sex life cannot understand the purpose of the absolute truth, nor can they be clean in their habits, not to mention showing mercy to others. They cannot remain grave, and they have no interest in the ultimate goal of life. The ultimate goal of life is Krishna or Vishnu, but those who are addicted to sex life cannot understand that their ultimate interest is Krishna consciousness. Such people have no sense of decency, and even in public streets or public parks, they embrace each other just like cats and dogs, and pass it off in the name of lovemaking. Such unfortunate creatures can never become materially prosperous. Behavior like that of cats and dogs keeps them in the position of cats and dogs. They cannot improve any material condition, not to speak of becoming famous. Such foolish persons may even make a show of so-called yoga, but they are unable to control the senses and mind, which is the real purpose of yoga practice. Such people can have no opulence in their lives. In a word, they are very unfortunate. Teshvashanteshu mudeshu kanditatma svata asadhushu kanditatma svata asadhushu sangam na kuryacho cheshu yoshit krida murgeshu cha. One should not associate with a coarse fool who is bereft of the knowledge of self-realization and who is no more than a dancing dog in the hands of a woman. Purport. The restriction of association with such foolish persons is especially meant for those who are in the line of advancement in Krishna consciousness. Advancement in Krishna consciousness involves developing the qualities of truthfulness, cleanliness, mercy, gravity, intelligence, and spiritual knowledge, simplicity, material opulence, fame, forgiveness, and control of the mind and the senses. All these qualities are to be manifested with the progress of Krishna consciousness. But if one associates with a Shudra, a foolish person who is like a dancing dog in the hands of a woman, then he cannot make any progress. Lord Chaitanya has advised that any person who is engaged in Krishna consciousness and who desires to pass beyond material nescience must not associate himself with women or with persons interested in material enjoyment. For a person seeking advancement in Krishna consciousness, such association is more dangerous than suicide. Wow. Sorry. Not tatasya, because by such association, if you just die immediately, then you'll take birth and you'll continue on where you left off. But if you are in bad association, you might go on the wrong path and might have to take, a few more births, or maybe many more births, because you just made your path a lot longer. Na tatasya bhaven moho bhandaschanya prasangata yoshit sangaryata pumso yata tat sangi sangata. The infatuation and bondage which accrue to a man from attachments to any other object is not as complete as that resulting from attachments to a woman or the fellowship of men who are fond of women. The infatuation and bondage which accrue from a man from attachment to any other object is not as complete as that resulting fellowship. Okay. Purport. Attachment to women is so contaminating that one becomes attached to the condition of material life not only by the association of women, but by the contaminated association of persons who are too attached to them. There are many reasons for our conditional life in this material world, but the topmost of all such causes is the association of women, as will be confirmed in the following stanzas. In Kali Yuga, association with women is very strong. In every step of life, there is association with women. If a person goes to purchase something, the advertisements are full of pictures of women. The physiological attraction for women is very great, and therefore people are very slack in spiritual understanding. The Vedic civilization, being based on spiritual understanding, arranges association with women very cautiously. Out of the 4 social divisions, the member of the first order, namely brahmacharya, the third order, vanaprastha, and the fourth order, sannyas, are strictly prohibited from female association. Only in one order, the householder, is there license to mix with women under restricted conditions. In other words, attraction for woman's association is the cause of the material conditional life, and anyone interested in being freed from this conditional life must detach himself from the association of women. And obviously, it's the other way around, women for men. Any woman who wants to be freed from this conditional life must detach herself from the association of men. Prajapati Samtu Hitaram Trishtvatadrupadarshita Rohibhutam Sundvatavad Raksharupi Hatatrapa Rohibhutam Sundvatavad Raksharupi Hatatrapa. At the sight of his own daughter, Brahma was bewildered by her charms and shamelessly ran up to her in the form of a stag when she took a form of a hind. What's a hind? It's a female deer. A female deer. Okay. Purport. Lord Brahma is being captivated by the charms of his daughter, and Lord Shiva is being captivated by the Mohini form of the Lord, are specific instances which instruct us that even great demigods like Brahma and Lord Shiva, what to speak of the ordinary conditioned soul, are captivated by the beauty of woman. Therefore, everyone is advised that one should not freely mix even with one's daughter, or with one's mother, or with one's sister, because the senses are so strong that when one becomes infatuated, the senses do not consider the relationship of daughter, mother, or sister. It is best, therefore, to practice controlling the senses by performing bhakti yoga, engaging in the service of Madan Mohan. Lord Krishna's name is Madan Mohan, for he can subdue the god Cupid or lust. Only by engaging in the service of Madan Mohan can one curb the dictates of Madan, Cupid. Otherwise, attempts to control the senses will fail. This is such an important point here. The way we get rid of lust isn't by trying to stop it. It's by just by giving all of our attention to Krishna, and then all that need for that beauty is completely fulfilled by Krishna. You get a higher taste. Once you've had rasmalai, eating plain sugar just isn't as good anymore. Tachishta shishta shishteshu konva kandi tadhi puman Rishim Narayanam Rite Yoshin Maye Hamayaya. Amongst all kinds of living entities begotten by Brahma, namely men, demigods, and animals, none but the sage Narayan is immune to the attraction of Maya in the form of woman. Purport. The first living creature is Brahma himself, and from him were created sages like Marichi, who in their turn created Kashyapa Muni and others. And Kashyapa Muni and the Manus created different demigods and human beings, etc. But there is none among them who is not attracted by the spell of Maya in the form of woman. Throughout the entire material world, beginning from Brahma down to the small, insignificant creatures like the ant, everyone is attracted by sex life. That is the basic principle of this material world. Lord Brahma's being attracted by his daughter is the vivid example that no one is exempt from the sexual attraction to woman. Woman, therefore, is the wonderful creation of Maya to keep the conditioned soul in shackles. Balang me pashamayaya Sri Maya Jaino Disham Ya karoti padakrantam pruvi jrimhena kevalam. Just try to understand the mighty strength of Maya. Oh, sorry. Just try to understand the mighty strength of my Maya in the shape of woman, who, by the mere movement of her eyebrows, can keep even the greatest conquerors of the world under her grip. Purport. There are many instances in the history of the world of great conquerors being captivated by the charms of Cleopatra. One has to study the captivating potency of woman and man's attraction for that potency. From what source was this generated? According to Vedanta Sutra, we can understand that everything is generated from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is enunciated there, Janma Dasa Yataha. This means that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or the Supreme Person Brahma, the Absolute Truth, is the source from whom everything emanates. The captivating power of woman and man's susceptibility to such attraction must also exist in the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the spiritual world, and must be represented in the transcendental pastimes of the Lord. The Lord is the Supreme Person, the Supreme Male. As a common male wants to be attracted by a female, that propensity similarly exists in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He also wants to be attracted by the beautiful features of a woman. Now the question is, if he wants to be captivated by such womanly attraction, would he be attracted by any material woman? It is not possible. Even persons who are in this material existence can give up womanly attraction if they are attracted by the Supreme Brahma. Such was the case with Haridas Thakur. A beautiful prostitute tried to attract him in the dead of night, but since he was situated in devotional service and transcendental love of Godhead, Haridas Thakur was not captivated. Rather, he turned the prostitutes into a great devotee by his transcendental association. This material attraction, therefore, certainly cannot attract the Supreme Lord. When he wants to be attracted by a woman, he has to create such a woman from his own energy. That woman is Radharani. It is explained by the Goswamis that Radharani is the manifestation of the pleasure potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When the Supreme Lord wants to derive transcendental pleasure, he has to create a woman from his internal potency. Thus, the tendency to be attracted by womanly beauty is natural because it exists in the spiritual world. In the material world, it is reflected pervertedly, and therefore there are so many inebriaties. Instead of being attracted by material beauty, if one is accustomed to be attracted by the beauty of Radharani and Krishna, then the statement of Bhagavad Gita, Param Drishta Nivartate, holds true. When one is attracted by the transcendental beauty of Radha and Krishna, he is no longer attracted by material feminine beauty. That is a special significance of Radha Krishna worship. That is testified to by Yamuna Acharya. He says, since I have become attracted by the beauty of Radha and Krishna, when there is attraction for a woman or a memory of sex life with a woman, I at once spit on it, and my face turns in disgust. When we are attracted by Madan Mohan and the beauty of Krishna and his consorts, then the shackles of conditioned life, namely the beauty of a material woman, cannot attract us. Sangam na kuryat pramata sujatu yogasya param paramarukshu vatsevaya pratilabdhatmalabho vadanti yad nirayadvaramasya. One who aspires to reach the culmination of yoga and has realized himself by rendering service unto me should never associate with an attractive woman. For such a woman is declared in the scripture to be the gateway to hell for the advancing devotee. Purport. The culmination of yoga is full Krishna consciousness. This is affirmed in Bhagavad Gita. A person who is always thinking of Krishna in devotion is the topmost of all yogis. And in the second chapter of the first canto of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, It is also stated that when one becomes freed from material contamination by rendering devotional service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he can at that time understand the science of God. Let me just look at the comments. Okay. Here the word pratilabdhatma labha occurs. Atma means self, and labha means gain. Generally, conditioned souls who have lost their atma are self, generally conditioned souls have lost their atma, or self, but those who are transcendentalists have realized the self. It is dictated that such a self-realized soul who aspires to the topmost platform of yogic perfection should not associate with young women. In the modern age, however, there are so many rascals who recommend that while one has genitals, he should enjoy women as much as he likes, and at the same time he can become a yogi. In no standard yoga system is association of women accepted. It is clearly stated here that the association of women is the gateway to hellish life. The association of women is very much restricted in the Vedic civilization. Out of the 4 social divisions, the brahmachari, vanaprastha, and the sannyasi, 3 orders are strictly prohibited from the association of women. Only the grahastas, or householders, are given license to have an intimate relationship with a woman, and that relationship is also restricted for begetting nice children. If, however, one wants to stick to continued existence in the material world, he may indulge in female association unrestrictedly. Yopayate shanarmaya yoshedeva vinirmita tamikshetatmano mrityum trenai kupam ivavritam. Oh, and Prajumna, you're asking gateway to hell? Yeah, because that's one of our biggest attachments here, being attached to the opposite sex. And so that's like what Srila Prabhupada just said in this last sentence. If one wants to stick to continued existence in the material world, one may indulge in female association unrestrictedly. Yeah, so I think it's specifically unrestricted association with women. And that's because that's our greatest attachment, that relationship. And so then we'll be, it's like the biggest binding to us. And so then we're eventually, we're going through all different kinds of species. Eventually we'll go to hell. So it is leading on that way to hell. The woman created by the Lord, I already read the Sanskrit. The woman created by the Lord is the representation of Maya. And one who associates with such Maya by accepting services must certainly know that this is the way of death, just like a blind well covered with grass. Anyways, because there's a funny story to tell, but anyway, I'm not gonna. Purport. Sometimes it happens that a rejected well is covered by grass. Okay, sorry. Sometimes it happens that a rejected well is covered by grass, and an unwary traveler who does not know of the existence of the well falls down, and his death is assured. Similarly, association with a woman begins when one accepts service from her, because woman is especially created by the Lord to give service to man. By accepting her service, a man is entrapped. If he is not intelligent enough to know that she is the gateway to hellish life, he may indulge in her association very liberally. This is restricted for those who aspire to ascend to the transcendental platform. Even 50 years ago in Hindu society, such association was restricted. A wife could not see her husband during the daytime. Householders even had different residential quarters. The internal quarters of a residential house were for the woman, and the external quarters were for the man. Acceptance of service rendered by a woman may appear very pleasing, But one should be very cautious in accepting such service, because it is clearly said that woman is the gateway to death or forgetfulness of oneself. She blocks the path of spiritual realization. Yang manyate pate mohan manmayam rishabhayatim stritvam stri sangata prapto vidapatya griha pradam. A living entity who, as a result of attachment to a woman in his previous life, has been endowed with the form of a woman, foolishly looks upon Maya in the form of a man, her husband, as the bestower of wealth, progeny, house, and other material assets. Purport. From this verse, it appears that a woman is also supposed to have been a man in his or her previous life, due to his attachment to his wife. He now has the body of a woman. Bhagavad Gita confirms this. A man gets his next life's birth according to what he thinks of at the time of death. If someone is too attached to his wife, naturally he thinks of his wife at the time of death, and in his next life, he takes the body of a woman. Similarly, if a woman thinks of her husband at the time of death, naturally she gets the body of a man in the next life. In the Hindu scriptures, therefore, a woman's chastity and devotion to a man is greatly emphasized. A woman's attachment to her husband may elevate her to the body of a man in her next life, but a man's attachment to a woman will degrade him, and in his next life he'll get the body of a woman. We should always remember, as it is stated in Bhagavad Gita, that both the gross and subtle material bodies are dresses. They are the shirt and coat of the living entity. To be either a woman or a man only involves one's bodily dress. The soul in nature is actually the marginal energy of the Supreme Lord. Every living entity, being classified as energy, is supposed to be originally a woman, or one who is enjoyed. Prakriti. But in the body of a man, there is a greater opportunity to get out of the material clutches. There is less opportunity in the body of a woman. In this verse, it is indicated that the body of a man should not be misused through forming an attachment to women and thus becoming too entangled in material enjoyment, which will result in getting the body of a woman in the next life. A woman is generally fond of household prosperity, ornaments, furniture, and dresses. She is satisfied when the husband supplies all these things sufficiently. The relationship between man and woman is very complicated, but the substance is that one who aspires to ascend to the transcendental stage of spiritual realization should be very careful in accepting the association of a woman. In the stage of Krishna consciousness, however, such restriction of association may be slackened, because if a man's and woman's attachment is not to each other, but to Krishna, then both of them are equally eligible to get out of the material entanglement and reach the abode of Krishna. As it is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, anyone who seriously takes to Krishna consciousness, whether in the lowest species of life, or a woman or of the less intelligent classes, such as the mercantile or labor class, that person who seriously takes to Krishna consciousness will go back to home, back to Godhead, and reach the abode of Krishna. A man should not be attached to a woman, nor should a woman be attached to a man. Both man and woman should be attached to the service of the Lord. Then there is the possibility of liberation from material entanglement for both of them. And actually, just something that I've observed is that, I think I mentioned this before, but that it seems like, especially women take to the path of bhakti a lot more easily, because they have that tendency to perform, to serve. And so bhakti is a lot more like easy and natural. I don't know, this just what I'm thinking is of when I lived in Mathura. Every day at class time, at kirtan time, at arati time, the temple was just packed full of ladies, and there'd probably be maybe one or two men there. And it's like that in Puri also. When I lived in Puri, there's tons of ladies that would come there, and they do all the services. We barely had to do everything. They cut the sabji, they wash the pots, they make the garlands, they do all the different services because they had that tendency to serve, and they'd come for all the classes and everything. Anyhow. Tamatmano vijaniyat patya patya grihatmakam daiva pasaditam mrityo mrigayor gayanam yata. They were ending with this verse. A woman therefore should consider her husband, her house, and her children to be the arrangement of the external energy of the Lord for her death, just as the sweet singing of the hunter is death for the deer. Wow. Purport. In these instructions of Lord Kapila, it is explained that not only is the woman the gateway to hell for a man, but man is also the gateway to hell for a woman. It is a question of attachment. A man becomes attached to a woman because of her service, her beauty, and her many other assets. And similarly, a woman becomes attached to a man for his giving her a nice place to live, ornaments, dress, and children. It is a question of attachment for one another. As long as either is attached to the other for such material enjoyment, the woman is dangerous for the man, and the man is also dangerous for the woman. But if the attachment is transferred to Krishna, both of them become Krishna conscious. And then marriage is very nice. Srila Rupa Goswami therefore recommends, Anasaktasya Vishayan Yatarham Upayunjata Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe Yuktam Vairakyam Uchate. Bhakti-rasamrita Sindhu 1-2-255. Man and woman should live together as householders in relationship with Krishna, only for the purpose of discharging duties in the service of Krishna. They should engage the wife, and engage the husband, all in Krishna conscious duties, and then all these bodily or material attachments will disappear. Since the vaya medium is Krishna, the consciousness is pure, and there is no possibility of degradation at any time. Okay, that's all we're reading for today. But I'm just reminded of that verse in, that song by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Nadio Godrume Nityananda Mahajan. The last verse is, what is it? Krishnera sansara koro chariyana char jivedaya Krishna nam sarvatama sar. Krishnera sansara koro. You should make your household completely centered around Krishna. You shall be engaged in Krishna's family, Krishna's household. Chari anachar. And give up all kinds of anachar, like bad habits, bad behavior, like that. And jivedaya Krishnanam sarva dharmasar. The essence of all religion, of all piety, is mercy towards the jivas and Krishna Nam. And also giving Nam to the jivas. All right. Oh, and tomorrow we will read we read about the effects of bad association, and now understanding birth and death and going beyond. Oh, and we'll probably finish that quickly because it's not so many verses, just 43 to 48. And so maybe we'll read some of 32 also. Entanglement and fruitive activities. Okay. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hari Bol, Haribo Nitai Gaur Haribo Nitai Gaur Haribo 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 Nitai Gaur Haribo. Jai Shishi Guru Garamaganda Vikakiri Shishi Radha Vinod Bihari Juki Jai Shri Govinda Gopinath Maran Mohan Juki Jai Nityaloka Vishta Vishnupad Ashtatara Shata Shishimachala Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Gosai Maharaj Shri Gurudev Ki Jai Nityaloka Vishta Vishnupad Ashtatara Shata Shishimachala Bhakti Vedanta Vaman Gosai Maharaj Ki Jai Nityaloka Vishta Vishnupad Ashtatara Shata Shishimachala Bhakti Vedanta Sai Maharaj Shila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nityal Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashatara Shatashmat Shila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Gosai Maharaj Ki Jai. Nityal Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashatara Shatashmat Shila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Gosai Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nityal Pravishta Maha Bhagavat Shila Gokshadas Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Nityal Pravishta Shila Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Jai. Nityal Pravishta Vaishnav Sarvabhauma Shila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Tadiya Shubha Tirabha Titi Ki Jai. Nityal Pravishta Vaishnavad Shri Rupano Gauriya Guru Varga Ki Jai. Nityal Pravishta Vaishnavad Saraswati Shila Bhakti Taita Madhav Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Tadiya Shubha Tirabha Titi Ki Jai. Nityal Pravishta Vaishnavad Ashtatara Shri Rasika Ananda Prabhu Ki Jai. Titi Ki Jai. Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jeev Gopal Bhattadash Raghunath Sharada Gosai Prabhu Ki Jai. Shri Sarup Damodar Rai Ramanantari Shri Gopal Shada Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Kshetra Mandala Gaura Mandala Vraja Mandala Mathura Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Sarva Abhishta Bharata Giriraj Maharaj Ki Jai. Shri Radha Kund Shama Kund Ki Jai. Shri Muna Devi Ganga Devi Ki Jai. Shri Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. Shri Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Shri Purnamasi Yogamaya Ki Jai. Shri Gopeshwar Mahadev Ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Samagata Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Nitai Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bo. Vrindai Tulsi Devai Priyai Keshavashata Krishna Bhakti Pradadevi Sattvatai Pancha Kalpatarubhyashta Kripa Sindhubhyaya Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Dandava Pranams. Thank you, Pujana Guru. Very good. Definitely. Yes, of course we worship Ganesh as Vaishnava. Ganesh, he's writing Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. He's the writer of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. He's the scribe. So of course Ganesh is a Vaishnava, sure. But the thing is, it's because it's the practice, pretty much everybody who worships Ganesh is worshipping him for some material benefit, because, yeah, and because he's he easily gives, grants fulfills people's material desires. He gives people what they want. And when you worship Vishnu, Vishnu doesn't gratify all your material desires. And so that's why that's why we don't generally worship Ganesh, because we don't want anything material. And it's so easy to want something material when we do our worship. It's, if we're worshiping Ganesh, then we're bound to have some material desires, and he'll fulfill them. But when we worship Vishnu, no, he's not going to fulfill those material desires. Do you remember? Were you with us when we read from Madhurya Kadambini, the third text? what was it saying? Somebody in the purport, somebody was asking, how is it that those, I forgot who was asking, but he's asking, how is it that those who worship Vishnu, who has the goddess of fortune, the Lakshmi Devi, the embodiment of all opulence and wealth and everything. She's your consort, and you're the abode of all opulence. But those who worship you become penniless. They become beggars. They have nothing. But then those who worship Shiva, who has nothing, he only has a deer skin around his waist, and he's covered in ashes and has no possessions, completely renounced. How is it that those who worship Shiva get all opulence? They get all wealth and money, and right? Remember that part? And so, yeah, us in our line, we don't want to have all these opulences, even though we might want it but we don't really want it, because that means that we'll never be able to attain the ultimate goal, praying. That's completely the opposite, wanting to enjoy ourselves. We want to give enjoyment to Krishna. All right, I'm signing off now. Haribol.